capacitance of a particular region. Okay, so in the same way, what we did is that we just looked into the accumulation just by biasing this VG in terms of a negative voltage, which is far away from this minus VFB. Okay, so then we applied a positive step input, and due to which there was some reduction in the charges, and that when we try to observe, so we were getting a graph which was having some sort of positive spike on the metal side. Okay, so even though we are trying to deposit a negative charge, when we take as a difference, it becomes as a positive spike. Okay, and later we just biased ourselves into a depletion mode where we assume some sort of positive voltage VG, but this voltage VG is less than the value of the threshold voltage. Okay, so in that case, we know that there are few positive charges, and again we apply a kind of bias voltage, and over this bias voltage we apply a step input, and due to which what we found is that there is an increase in the positive charge when I apply a positive step input, and that difference, when we look again, we end up having some sort of positive charges that happens to be across our oxide and the metal. Okay, but these charges are right now not just separated by the value of TOX. Okay, but they are being separated by a large distance. Okay, and that distance is basically includes the diffusion region as well. Okay, so that's the reason why the capacitance can be visualized as something like two types of capacitors that are being connected in series. Okay, one is the capacitance that we generally have as a kind of charge across the thickness of the oxide. The other is a capacitance due to the depletion region. Clear? So this series combination is as similar to what we generally read in terms of resistive network. It's a kind of parallel combination. When we put two resistances in parallel of same magnitude, obviously you would end up having the magnitude becoming half. Okay, there is always a reduction in the value of the resistance. So in this case, when we put the capacitors in series, obviously the capacitive value will then get reduced just because of the series combination. Okay, so this can be compared with what we already know from the basics of resistive network. Okay, yeah. So now let us move on to the other region, which is the inversion region, wherein we are trying to bias our MOS structure, which is much higher than the value of threshold voltage. Okay, so and later when I try to apply a positive step input, and obviously we end up having some sort of a spike. Okay, that spike of charges right now is currently separated by a distance of just TOX. Okay, and due to which we end up having the same similar type of capacitance as we had it before in the case of an accumulation. Okay, so this inversion region capacitance is as similar to what we have observed when we observed in the case of an accumulation region. Okay, and now that all of these capacitance can be plotted something like this. Okay, because throughout this accumulation, you could see that this COX quantity, or generally the capacitance CG, whatever it is. Okay, so this capacitance value is almost like constant. Okay, and then you are entering into what is known as a depletion region. In this depletion region, you could see that there is a kind of reduction in the capacitance. Why? Because there are two capacitors that appears in series, and among this, one of the capacitance has a variable depletion width. Okay, because the depletion width that I have marked here depends on a particular value of VG, or the particular value of capital VG, or the bias voltage. Okay, so depending on which the depletion region that gets cancelled out would then return as a variable x1. Okay, so this x1 is basically a variable quantity with respect to the gate voltage that I apply. Okay, so the gate voltage, in the sense the DC voltage that I apply. So when I put this graph in terms of large signal analysis, this VG is kept on change, and whenever we try to identify, the x1 or the depletion width actually expands, okay, throughout this entire segment. Clear? And then it finally reaches a particular point, which is the minimum capacitance value. And after this, once I cross the value of VG, which is greater than the value of threshold voltage, you could see that there is a sharp increase in the value of this capacitance of the gate. Okay, so from the series combination, we have reverted back to a single capacitor structure. Clear? So now, clearly, this graph helps us to identify my flat band voltage, because it is this flat band voltage that separates the accumulation region from the depletion region. And again, it also helps us to identify the threshold voltage of the device just by looking at this particular graph. Clear? And again, this threshold voltage is the one that differentiates your depletion region from the inversion region. Clear? So, yeah, yes?
Flat band voltage is to flatten the Fermi level.
Yeah.
So how does depletion or accumulation come into picture?
Yeah, actually, this is generally from the concept that we know that when I am not applying any voltage across this MOS structure that we discussed in the last class, we found that there were, because of the Fermi level mismatches, we end up having some sort of ions, negative ions, if it is a p-type, we end up having some sort of depletion layer. Okay, and that is something that we are talking about this particular region where the value of Vg is taken as 0. Okay, so because of these ions, there were some positive charges that is being landed on the other side. Now we were trying to apply some sort of negative potential across this structure in order to remove these positive charges. And when I try to apply a voltage which is exactly equal to minus VFB, what happens is that I'm completely depleting all the charges that were there across the interface between the metal and the oxide. And also, I'm trying to deplete all of these ions away from this interface between the oxide and the p-type semiconductor. So I have no charges across them. Okay, so now any voltage that I try to apply, which is much more negative than this. Okay, so say for example, I'm applying a much larger value of negative voltage onto this MOS structure, then what does it mean is that I'm trying to apply more of negative charges here. Okay, so in this case, this will induce a negative charge. Okay, but when I'm between this voltage of 0 and minus VFB, we are trying to remove those positive charges. Okay, so throughout this entire segment, we were trying to remove the positive charges. Okay, hope I have answered. And at this particular point, there is no charge. And beyond which, any voltage that I am applying, that in turn tries to deposit negative charges and in turn pulls all our positive charges. So this is what is known as the accumulation. Okay, since depletion starts after Vg is greater than, okay, yeah. So I told this phenomena just because in order to ease our thinking process, okay? Because here in this case, I said we will choose the depletion voltage between 0 to Vt. This is a rough statement that I made because I don't want to directly go there. Like I could have said like minus VFB to Vt. Okay, so but it would be rather easier for us to think in terms of a positive voltage. So that's the reason why I, instead of writing it as minus VFB in the place of 0, I just wrote it as 0 just to make our process of thinking a bit easier, nothing else. Okay, but in general, the depletion region actually it's not starting from 0, but it is actually starting from minus VFB itself. Okay, but when I'm starting from this minus VFB, we are trying to put on the positive charges. Okay, so when I go towards this side, from 0 charge that I had here, I'm trying to deposit the positive charge, and the positive charge keeps increasing till this particular point. Okay, and the depletion layer width also widens up. Clear? So I think I didn't say this particular word just in order to ensure that you are not getting confused with this minus VFB term before I reach to that final graph. That's the only reason. Okay, nothing else. But you know that at minus VFB, we don't have any charges across the metal oxide as well as oxide semiconductor interface. That's it. Okay, so we'll not worry much about this. Okay, why does this graph show some sort of curvature or something like this, particularly in the case of a depletion mode? Can there be any reason for this particular condition?
The depletion region length will increase.
How does this length actually matters for us? Because this is a plot wherein I'm not plotting anything with respect to the length. Actually, it is the, yeah, obviously the capacitance. Through the capacitance, I have a length term, but otherwise, this is something like a kind of voltage that is being plotted on a linear axis. Okay, so what it really means is that there is something that I want to bring out what I taught in the previous classes. Okay, so we know this MOS structure has some sort of weird electric field profile, right? So what I said is that particularly in the case of a depletion, I'm talking. Okay? So in the case of a depletion mode, we just randomly wrote something for the electric field, and based on the electric field, we also wrote some sort of potential field as well. Okay, and I really wanted to bring all these concepts to be put together because we are studying engineering, not just VLSI. Okay, so I want to bring all the concepts that you would have learned before and try to map those things so that it makes sense when you try to read those subjects individually. Okay, so this is our x-axis and this is the interface at which x is equal to 0, and this interface I'm just going to consider between the metal and the oxide at minus dYx, okay? And with the same axis, we will just try to plot the electric field first, and then after then we will just try to plot the potential profile, okay? Now we know that inside the metal, due to Gauss law, because there is no charges, it results in some sort of zero electric field, okay? But when I look across the oxide, maybe this is not the depletion mode of circuit that I have, okay? I should have had some sort of positive VG or something, okay? So just assume that there is some sort of depletion here, okay? This drawing would again kill up my time. Yeah, so we have some sort of charge distribution, okay? So for this, let us try to evaluate. Since because there is a positive charge, there is obviously some sort of electric field that moves here, okay? And since there is no charge that can lie within this oxide, what happens is that this electric field will be a constant one. We proved all of these things in the previous class, okay? Now, what about the field across this layer of dielectric medium? Was it constant, or it just like that it went down? How was the electric field across this depletion region?
Linearly decreasing.
Yeah, it was linearly decreasing. Now, this linear decrease in this electric field across this depletion region, okay, so it goes something like this. It is not the graph that I have. And we also know that this electric fields can jump to different values, okay? So they can have distinct values at these interfaces, okay? So I will not go much more technical because this is not really what is required for us, okay? So that's the reason why I'm not talking too much about it. But in case if you're interested, then we will discuss, or I can share the material, okay? So this was our electric field. And when I translate this by making use of the potential equation, which is nothing but the gradient of phi, okay? So phi is nothing but a scalar potential. And when I try to translate this based on this equation, and this is a three-dimensional space, but I can just write it in terms of one-dimensional space, something like d by phi by dx, okay? So now based on this, if I try to plot, what type of potential that we had here, that is the thing that I just want to bring out here, okay? When the electric field is equal to 0, any potential that I have here, the same potential appears here because there is no drop across metal, okay? So due to which, the potential that I apply, anything like a 5 volt, on this side of my metal would appear exactly as 5 volt here, because there is the resistance of this metal is assumed to be nil, okay? So due to which I will have the same potential till this particular junction, okay? But once I reach this metal oxide interface, there is something that happens. So what does it actually happens here? Just because the field exists, okay, with some sort of positive value, obviously there's supposed to be some sort of potential difference, okay? So this potential difference, when I look, it was a linear relation that I had. I didn't prove this. I think probably for these two things I have proved, but I didn't prove for this quantity because I just left that as a kind of for you to think, okay? But when I try to convert this linear relation of the electric field into a potential graph, this potential graph has turned itself into some sort of quadratic graph. And obviously, supposed to terminate, and because of the boundary condition, you cannot have some sort of distinct voltages actually, okay? So you should have a continuous something like this, okay? So this was a quadratic, okay? And it is because across this depletion region, what I find is a kind of voltage that appears as a kind of quadratic voltage, okay? Maybe I have to write it as phi of x, which is nothing but the potential profile, okay? So any voltage that drops across this is basically a quadratic with respect to the distance, okay? But when I try to plot this particular graph, this axis is not a quadratic axis, okay? It's a kind of linear axis. So due to which the capacitance takes the shape of the quadratic nature, okay? And now you might wonder, okay, so if my capacitance is taking that nature of quadratic, then on the other side, because this is my linear, I have converted this VG as a kind of linear. So in order to have a kind of quadratic, the other side also have to have the same similar quadratic relation, which means that even my Q, when I try to plot on a linear axis of VG, then the Q has to support the quadratic, okay? So I'll just show a final picture, okay? So with that, let me try to wind up this discussion. Okay. So you could see that there is an accumulation, and the region that separates between these two segments is what is termed as minus VFB, okay, at which I don't have any charge because this is the y-axis of my charge, and this y-axis is generally turns out to be a 0 value, okay. So in this case, I don't have any charge across the gate, okay. And after then, I'm entering into the depletion region, okay. But because my VG is taken in terms of a linear axis, this particular Q takes up the quadratic relation, okay. So that when you try to plot it in terms of CV Kara, it appears something like this, okay. It appears something like this. So this graph and this graph are trying to tell the same thing, okay. Just because in the depletion region, the potential profile is basically quadratic, and due to which we have this kind of relation. And when we move away, what happens is that the potential is basically equal to 0, okay. So the potential from this point to this point is same, okay. So if I have a ground or a 0 volt, the same 0 volt appears exactly at the interface between the p-type semiconductor and the immobile ions, okay. But I will have some sort of potential, okay. So some potential would be there, and that potential difference would be quadratic with respect to the distance, okay. And it is because of this quadratic differences we are getting such a kind of graph both for CV as well as QV graphs, okay. So this is in the case when I have metal oxide semiconductor where the semiconductor is a p-type, okay. But in case if the semiconductor is an n-type, how does this graph should look like? Any guess?
Mirror about the axis will happen, okay?
Yeah.
Plus VFB.
Yeah, exactly. So what happens is that our VFB will, for an n-type semiconductor, will be a positive quantity, okay? Because the MOS, when I'm trying to build by making use of an n-type semiconductor, the combination of this results in what is known as a PMOS, okay? And we know that the threshold voltage of a PMOS is a negative value. So which means that this is the graph for an NMOS where I had a positive voltage for the threshold voltage, okay? So this point will be moved over here, and whatever I had for VFB will be moving towards the other side, okay? So there will be a flip. There is some sort of flip that will happen. So this point will move here and this point will move here, okay? And then you connect them in the same similar fashion, okay? So again, you see that when I try to put when I go towards the negative side, what I'm trying to do is that in the accumulation, I'm trying to deposit more of electrons onto the metal, okay? And that's the reason why the QG is taking a negative value when I'm moving in this direction, okay? So this point, when you shift here, this accumulation happens by adding more of positive charge on the metal side, okay? So you can think around it. I don't think this is a great science for me to explain about it, because if you understand how does it work, then by sure that you can draw this particular picture for this MOS structure where the semiconductor is of n-type. Clear? Yeah, so I'm just get back into this metal oxide semiconductor with the sources and drain, okay? For that, I just want to show one thing. Yeah, so this is just the second part of our discussion. The only thing that I wanted to show here is about the three-dimensional structure of MOSFET, okay? Yeah. So now in this case, you could see this is my length of the channel, okay? And the orange one that I have here is nothing but the source. The other terminal can be taken as a drain, okay? And the green one here that I have shaded is basically nothing but our oxide. And then the metal in blue and the dark color that I have here is a semiconductor, okay? This can be anything. So in case if I'm considering this as an NMOS transistor, then this gray shade would be my p-type semiconductor, okay? And the orange shades would represent an n-type semiconductor or n plus region, okay? So now I just want to show this particular structure because when I try to calculate the capacitance of this MOS structure, what we have actually calculated is just COX. So the expression for COX is not exactly equal to farad, okay? Which is written as epsilon divided by thickness of the oxide, has a unit which is farad per meter square, okay? Now, in case if I want to actually calculate the gate capacitance, what I'm supposed to do? I have to remove this meter square, okay? So how I can remove this meter square? I have to add some area in order to measure the total gate capacitance, okay? So now when I look back into this particular circuit, the area that is surrounded by this MOS structure, that is metal, oxide, and the region underneath this, okay? Because here is where my channel will form. The channel will not be formed anywhere else. So I'm just concerned about the portion where the channels are getting formed, okay? So if that is the case, the bottom part represents the length of the channel, okay? So, and this side way, if I look, this particular point represents the width of my channel, clear? So you have the length and the width that gives us the area underneath this particular MOS structure, right? So when I try to use those information, then I would end up having some sort of gate capacitance, okay? Hope that this makes sense. And the unit of this CG, when I look, it is just a farad, okay? It is no more farad per meter square, okay? So the unit of the COX is generally returned in terms of farad per meter square, and we have to multiply some area in order to get the actual capacitance value of the gate, clear? Now, in the case of a MOSFET, we have to consider even the source and the drain, okay? And we know all the 3 different regions of operation that happens even for this type of semiconductor, provided if my VDS was taken as 0, clear? But as I said, in the case of an accumulation, we could see that there is a higher concentration of positive charges. Okay, maybe I will just use the red one. There is a higher concentration of positive charges than compared to the bulk material, okay? Just because I have more of negative charges on the metal surface, due to which I have more of positive charge. Now, I could say that this capacitance is between the gate, which is the metal, and this semiconductor, okay? But when I look for a region, which is known as inversion, okay? Now, what is happening is that we have inverted all of the charges, which means that I have positive charges on the metal, whereas at the bottom I have negative charges, and along with those negative charges there is some sort of separation, okay? So this separation is just created by the depleted ions, okay? So these are the ions that separates me. Now this capacitance cannot be referred with respect to what is known as the bulk, okay? Previously, when I had positive charges, I could measure as a kind of capacitance that happens to be between the gate and the body. So in general, this p-type semiconductor, I will just call it as a body, okay? But right now, there is a medium that separates the body from the channel, okay? So it is no more, it's a capacitance between the gate and the body, but rather this capacitance has to be referred with some sort of potential, okay? So say for example, generally this p-type semiconductor will have the body getting biased to a particular potential, which is generally taken as a ground, okay? So we were having some sort of potential difference between the gate and the body when I'm working under the accumulation region. But when I'm working under the inversion region, we don't have any sort of connection to this body, okay? So now how will I refer to this COX term? Now I need some sort of potential that actually gives us some sort of capacitance, okay? So right now, when I'm at inversion region, I cannot refer to this body, but rather, if at all, if I have the source being connected to some potential, it can be a ground or it can be any other potential. Even the drain will also get connected to some potential, right? So in this case, since I am assuming that VDS is equal to 0, I can still assume that even my drain is also connected to the ground. So what happens is that you could see that this capacitance can be referred as CGS and CGD, okay? And both these capacitances are equal. So which means that we know that the capacitance that it actually forms is generally given as COX, okay, the capacitance per unit area. So this capacitance per unit area, or this COX, can be equally shared between 2 kind of references, okay? One is CGS, the other one is CGD, okay? And what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to take half of the COX and then I will give to both these people. It is something like a parent who has some sort of house or a property, okay? And he has 2 children. So what he does is that he just split his entire property into 2 parts, right? And that is what is happening. But still, the value of CGS and CGD are always in terms of farad, okay? But we know that the COX is not defined in terms of farad. So what I'm supposed to do, I have to multiply them with the width and the length, okay? The width and the length for both these cases, such that I end up having some sort of farad for these two capacitance. Clear? So these are the capacitances that are defined when I am in the inversion region. Okay. So whereas in the case of accumulation, I'm just going to define a term which is known as CGB, which is nothing but the capacitance between the gate and the body. And how will I define that capacitance? Again, this is a capacitance where I have COX, and we know that the unit of the COX is basically farad per meter square. So I will just multiply an area in order to remove that meter square term. Okay, and this would be my capacitance. Okay, so now let us try to replot the same thing that I have plotted for the CV Kera. Okay, the gate capacitance. In this current discussion, I'm just going to assume my VDS is equal to 0. Okay, so remember that this is the condition that I'm using in order to plot this graph. Okay, now again, I have something known as plus threshold voltage and minus VFP across this VGS. Okay, and then what is the type of capacitance value that I have in this particular region, or the region of accumulation, the region of depletion, and this is the region of inversion. Okay. Yeah, so now let us talk about the capacitances. Now, what is the type of capacitance that I will have here? Whether it is CGS, CGD, or CGB?
CGB.
Yeah, it would be CGB, okay? Because we know that there won't be any channel in this particular region, okay? There is no negatively charged free electrons that are available in the accumulation. What I have is a free positive charge, but they will not be able to conduct, okay? So this value of graph would be equivalently taken as CGB. And when I'm getting into the depletion region, what would happen to the C? Right now, this CGB will not take just COX, but it would take C equivalent, okay, into the length and the width. And what is the C equivalent? The C equivalent is nothing but can be written as 1 upon COX plus 1 upon CB. You remember there was a depletion region, okay? Due to that depletion region, we had an extra capacitor, and these two capacitance of COX and CB were appearing in series, and due to which we called them as C equivalent rather than COX. Clear? Okay, so that is the quantity that happens here. And the moment we raise this value of CB, what happens is that the effective capacitance steps down. Okay, and then it moves all the way down to some minimum value. We are not worried about that minimum value. And after then, what happens to the value of CGB when I'm getting into the inversion region? Do we have any connection with respect to the body?
No.
No. Now, obviously, the CGB goes down to 0. Am I right? Yeah. So this graph only talks about CGB. But what about the graph of my CGS or CGD? Where does it exactly come into picture? Do we have any capacitance between the gate and the source in this particular region or in this particular region? Because we are, they were considered to be equal to 0 because I don't have any negative charges. Because why I'm, maybe the confusion is just because this is actually electrons. But in the case of accumulation, what I had across the channel is a positive charge, okay? So positive charge or something like a negative ions were there. So I cannot refer anything with respect to the source or the drain. So those capacitances are considered to be equal to 0 in the case when I am working under the accumulation or under the depletion region. But the moment we get the inversion, the channel becomes negatively charged. And these charges can communicate with the source and the drain. These negative free carriers can communicate right now, not the ions. Clear? So due to which the capacitance of both CGS and CGD, since we know that these both of them would rise and then shifts to a particular value, which is CGD and CGS. And now these values, if at all, if I want to compare, we know that the comparison gives us, it is half the value of COX into the length and the width. But this guy had COX into width into length. Okay, so it would be exactly in the middle. Now, rather than writing something like COX into length and the width, I can introduce a kind of term which I'm just calling it as C0. Okay, just to ease our representation, nothing else. Okay, so this C0 is a kind of capacitance. It doesn't refer exactly as a kind of capacitance between the gate and the body, nor it doesn't refer to a capacitance between the gate and the drain or to the source. Okay, it's just the term, so that I can use this term rather than writing it always as COX into length and the width. I could write just as C naught. Clear? So just a kind of normalized capacitance expression. That's it. Okay, doesn't serve apart from this for any other purpose. Just for ease, we are trying to introduce. So now what I do is that I try to replace this CGP in terms of C naught. It becomes easier for us to write them. That's it. Okay, and this would then be returned as C naught by 2. That's it. Clear? So hope that you don't have any doubt as far as this discussion is concerned. Okay, yeah. So now I just want to write just the gate capacitance without any reference. So this graph, where you see I'm just referring it as just gate capacitance, but I'm not referring to the other end of my terminal. Okay, so this other end can be body, or it can be a source, or it can be drain, anything. Okay, so that's the reason why I could able to plot this entire graph without referring to any other reference potential. Okay, this was the graph that I plotted without looking at a particular reference potential. Okay, there was no common ground or something like that when I try to plot this graph. But here we know we are trying to deal with some sort of electrical circuits, and it needs some sort of reference potential. So this was the graph that was being mapped with respect to some common potential. Okay, so either across the body or across the source and the drain. Clear? And now if at all, if I want to plot over this, the same graph, this is our CG without any reference, the purple one. Okay, this is what is known as the gate capacitance, and this was the graph that I have plotted when I am working with a VDS equal to 0. But what happens when I have a VDS that is different? Because the VDS actually plays a role in which region? Does it play a role in the accumulation region? Any value of VDS, does it play any role in this accumulation region? What happens when you try to vary the potentials across the source and the drain when you have just positive charges here in the accumulation region? What happens?
It only plays a role in inversion region.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I want that answer to be told by you. Okay. So in general, the drain and the source potential never matter at all when I'm either in the accumulation region or in the depletion region. It gets into matter only when I'm in the inversion region. Okay. Now I'm just going to plot a new graph. And this graph is about maybe both CGS as well as CGD. Okay. And I'm just going to talk about some approximations. Clear? And this graph is actually, it's a kind of normalized graph. So what it means is that it is something like VD by VDS sat. Okay. Yeah. So we know that for a long channel, the saturation drain to source potential is defined to be equal to, what does this VDS sat means?
Pinch of voltage.
Yeah, exactly. This is nothing but our pinch of voltage, or it is this particular drain to source potential that separates us from linear region from the saturation region. Clear? So, and this can also be written as VGS minus VT. Okay, or it is nothing but it's our VOV, overdrive voltage. Okay. Now, because I'm just going to draw this particular axis right from the value of 0 all the way to the value of 1. Okay, so when I have this guy to be equal to 1, which means that the value of VDS is equal to VDS sat. Okay, and this term is the value of VDS that is equal to 0. Okay, now the only thing is that what was the value that I had across CGS and CGD when the VDS is equal to 0? What was that value? We just evaluated in terms of C naught, right? What was that value? It would be C naught by 2. Am I right? This is the quantity I'm talking. And I said this entire graph was being plotted under the assumption that the VDS value was considered to be at 0. Okay. So when the value of VDS was equal to 0, what has happened is that we have split this property into two equal portions. Okay, for both of the gate to source as well as the gate to drain. Okay. Now, but as we move on, what happens at this particular junction? When the value of VDS is equal to VDS sat, what happens to the channel in the MOS structure? Will it be same, like a kind of rectangle filled with all electrons, or will it be a tapered channel? How does the channel would look like between the source and the drain? And this is my drain. Okay, and I have applied across this VDS, which is equal to VDS SAT. Now, what do we mean by this pinch off voltage or VDS SAT?
Channel is modulated.
So it is
Yeah, the channel is being pinched off. So which means that in this case, the amount of charge that I have here is not same as that of the charges that I have across the source, right? So there is some sort of difference between the source and the drain charge distribution. Basically, when I get closer to this drain, there is no charge at all, which means that I have a capacitance value. It's supposed to be equal to 0, right? So now what happens is that the capacitance that I have here actually drops all the way to 0. And what capacitance that drops to the value of 0? It is nothing but our CGD. Because by the time when I reach a voltage where VDS is equal to VDSAT, there is no channel near to the drain. Means that I don't have any charge, extra charges, okay? So due to which the capacitance obviously falls down to the value of 0. But what happens to the other side? How to, should I need to draw something like this? Of same value, or will it take this particular shape? Just a guess, okay? I'll talk about it, but just the guesswork, okay? So 1 or 2. So which one does it take?
1.
Once.
One.
No. Okay. Yeah, because when I say half, it's fine, but there are some electrons that are sitting here, okay? So they also get added to this capacitance, okay? So the pinch off is happening exactly at this particular point, but still we have this charges that's supposed to belong to CGD is being left over, okay? And these leftovers would then get added to this CGS capacitance, and due to which it would take the shape of 2, okay? And the capacitance, it is 2/3 of the value of C0, clear? This is based on the tapering effect. One could actually try to work out to get this particular answer 2/3, okay? And in case if you want, I can share you a particular material which is almost like 46-page length, okay? So which is a quite complicated derivation, which is not really required for us to learn about it. It's more related to the physics about the charges and stuffs, okay? So we'll not go much in depth in this particular discussion, 2/3, yeah? Yeah. And the total gate capacitance as a whole, with respect to the gate alone, then we know the value of the gate capacitance would be equal to C0. And it's just the addition of these two capacitances, okay? And the graph that I've drawn here is my CGS graph, okay? So the total gate capacitance, CG, can be written as a summation of CGS plus CGD. And now that I'm just trying to plot with this orange color, the expression for the CG, okay? And at this particular point, the value would be equal to C0 by 2 and C0 by 2 when the value of VDS is at 0, okay? So due to which, when we add both these quantities, we have the gate capacitance that is equal to C0. And I start from here. And as I move along the value of this x-axis, what happens is that they both sum up, it gets reduced and reaches this particular value, okay? So you could see that the capacitance, the gate capacitance, sees a kind of variation with respect to the drain to source potential, okay? It not only varies with respect to gate to source potential, but also it varies with respect to drain to source potential also, okay? So in short, the gate capacitance is a kind of variable quantity, okay? It does vary with respect to the potential, both with respect to VGS, also with respect to the VDS, okay? And this is the graph that shows both these relations. This one is with respect to VGS, and this one is with respect to the VDS, clear? Okay, so now this is the one type of capacitance that we have discussed, and we call this as a kind of intrinsic capacitance. When I look for a gate capacitance, the gate capacitance has two components. One we call as an intrinsic capacitance. Okay. So when I say intrinsic capacitance, it is nothing but the CG and CGB, CGS, CGD. Okay, so all of these things with respect to both VGS and as well as VDS, whatever we discussed so far, is all comes under the topic of intrinsic capacitance. And this intrinsic capacitance is a kind of a function of potential, okay, V, both VDS as well as VGS, clear? That is what I was trying to show in both these graphs. Okay, number 1 and 2. Clear?
So what about VFB?
VFB will not come into picture, right? Because we are worried about only this particular portion, because as I said, the VDS will play a role only in the inversion region, and in the inversion region, the VGS can be kept at any value. Okay, so either this value or this value of VGS can be kept. I'm worried only on the inversion region. Okay, as I said, the VDS will not have any role either in the accumulation nor in the depletion region. It doesn't have any role. So I'm not concerned with those regions when I'm talking about the gate capacitance with respect to VDS. The VDS don't play any role in it.
Sir, here C0, irrespective of CGS and CGD, so it should remain constant, no, sir, because the leftover charges across the gate and drain terminal will move towards the gate and source, no, sir, in channel length modulation.
Correct.
Therefore,
But, yeah, so in this region, that the whole of this particular plot, I don't have two variables here. Okay, so one of the variable is VGS, and the other variable has to be fixed to some constant, and I have fixed the constant to be equal to 0. If I assume that this VDS was equal to VDS sat, okay, in case if you're really curious about how this graph would look like, then I have to pick a color. The value of CGD would be taken as 0. Okay, so I will not have CGD here, if at all, if I'm having this as my bias condition. But the value of CGS will then be drawn something like this, which is 2/3 of my C0. Okay, and there is no CGD here. The CGD is completely 0. But this graph, which I have drawn in green color, was under the assumption that the value of VDS was taken at 0. Okay, but whatever the graph that I've drawn towards the left side of this VT will never change at all. Whatever the value of VDS that I have, it will never change. We were talking about a gate capacitance, and the type of capacitance that I was working is only across the intrinsic capacitance. But this gate capacitance also has one more capacitance, which we call it as a overlap capacitance. Let me just write this. I'm just going to write this as COL, just to have some convention to be different from the CG that I had here. Okay, so the convention that I use for the intrinsic capacitance is just CG, but the convention, and this CG has derived version. When I'm trying to refer the CG with respect to body, it will take the form of CGB. If I'm referring the gate capacitance with respect to source, this CG will take the form of CGS. Okay, so that is how the CG is being connected to each of these capacitances. Clear? So in the same similar way, I will also have a capacitance which is known as a overlap capacitance. So it has something known as CGOL, and it is not being referred to any particular terminal. But when I try to refer, then this would take the form of CGSOL, CGDOL, something like that. Clear? So first, let me try to explain what is this overlap capacitance. And what we will find at the end is that this overlap capacitance in general is not a function of VDS nor VDS. Okay, so this is what we would try to see in this particular topic. Okay, so now you could see that there is a kind of overlap between this metal and then the oxide, and then underneath the oxide you see that there is an N+ region. When they try to deposit, the N+ region actually includes beneath the region of the oxide. Okay, so this actually creates what is known as a kind of capacitance for us. Okay, and we call this capacitance that has been found between the metal, oxide, and the N+ region. Okay, and again, the same similar way, you could see even across the other side, there is an overlap of my diffusion layer. Okay, beneath this oxide layer. Okay, there is a thin that goes along this particular side. Okay, so throughout this entire width, it runs. Clear? And it occupies a certain length over here. Okay, and this CGOL is always defined in terms of farad per meter. And the reason why is that in general, when I try to calculate the total capacitance imposed by the overlap part, you could see that the width of this particular region is basically can be a variable. It depends on the designer. Okay, he can choose any width that he wants, but the length depends on the fabrication. Okay, how much of inclusion of N+ region goes under this oxide depends on the fabrication process. Okay, so due to which the capacitance of the CgOL is always defined in terms of farad per meter. So now if I want to calculate the total capacitance due to the overlap, the only thing I have to do is that I have to multiply by the width. Okay, so that I will end up having some sort of overlap capacitance value in terms of farad. Okay, so I guess I've just gone beyond the permitted time. I will end my session here. So I guess even on Monday we supposed to continue with the capacitance thing, because there is one more type of capacitance that we still yet to discuss, and after then we have to get into what is known as the second order effects. Okay, so